What's going on, everybody? My name is Blake Gruffino, and this is Are You Serious? And do we have a good show in store for you today? The Saints beat Atlanta Falcons, and they're going back to the playoffs after a couple years of being 7-9. I'm glad to see our Saints, back in the playoffs. And they also have a chance next weekend to clinch the division, which would be really huge. The Saints really had a good game on Christmas Eve against the Atlanta Falcons. Drew Brees was pinpoint, like he's been all season. I'll show you how he's been all season, pinpoint accurate, even with an effective running game. And this is what is going to keep Drew Brees and this New Orleans Saints team, which could be the favorite in the NFC with a couple of quarterbacks with the Eagles and Minnesota, their lead quarterbacks being down. But we'll get into that. Also, I'm going to break down some LSU recruiting. I know a lot of fans are a little upset about, we don't have a top 10 ranking. Just calm down. And look, we're going to break that down in length. I think that this could be one of the better classes that LSU's had in a long time, and we will get into that as well. But before we get into all that, I have some breaking news. You can catch my entire show on YouTube. That's right, I'm going to share the link with you. You can catch the entire show on YouTube, and I will share that link with you like I just mentioned. And it's going to be a big day. I got a new camera for, thank you, Santa. Santa brought me a new camera, and we're going to be doing all of our big time shows. And it's going to be a little bit longer, and that way I can edit some of these videos, and we can really break down some segments, and you guys can catch the entire show from right here on YouTube or on my website at RUSeriousSports.com. But let's break down the Saints versus the Falcons. I said, and I mentioned that Brees was pinpoint, and he really was, going 21 for 28 for 239 yards and a score. He did have a pick, which, look, Deion Jones, who's an LSU boy, look, he really has a feel for Brees with 2 interceptions on him this year. But look, the Brees, if you saw the game, the Brees throw to Ted Ginn, it was pinpoint accurate. Drew still shows you that how good of his arm is, and he can put the ball wherever he wants to. And the way that you know that is over a 16, or now what's going to be a 16-game season. Drew Brees is leading the NFL and could have the best completion percentage in NFL history at 71.9. If he continues this route, it would be the best that anyone has ever had in the NFL. And it kind of goes unnoticed at times at how accurate Drew Brees really is. 71.9%, you're completing 7 out of 10 passes, and even a little bit more than that. Brees has been pinpoint all season. Now, we all know that it's the defense has been playing better, and that Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram have had really good, or done really well this season, having really good rushing attacks. But Brees has been pinpoint. Look, I just mentioned the running backs, but Alvin Kamara, the stat sheet's going to lie to you a little bit. Got a lot of tough yards with 12 rushes for 32 yards, but he had 7 catches for 58 yards, and he didn't score, but that's okay. Look, the Saints and Sean Payton want to get Alvin Kamara at least 20 touches in a game, and you got to do that. Now, and they're also breaking down Mark Ingram to 12 to about 16 to 17 touches a game, and they are dynamic when they both do that. I know for a long time, a lot of people said just give Mark Ingram the ball 20 to 25 times, but you can see that how this Saints team is really feeding off this rushing attack. Now, the Saints, over the entire season, which we'll break down in a minute, have had a lot of pieces moving around on the offensive line, and maybe that's why for the last couple of weeks that this rushing attack hasn't been completely as good as you've seen in past weeks, but they still got a lot of tough yards. And Drew Brees, look, the Saints went under 100 yards rushing, but that's what Drew Brees gives you, even though he doesn't have the huge yardage. He converted a lot of good third downs, and I know that a lot of those third downs, the refs made some calls, but look, it was the same in the first game. There were some bad calls against the Saints that converted 9 third down conversions for the Falcons, and the Saints has got a couple of breaks here and there from the refs, but nevertheless, this game was still pretty hard fought and still pretty close. Look, on the defensive side, Julio Jones, this is where stats lie. Stats are like bikinis. They show a lot, but they don't show everything. I love Lou Piniella, the old Cubs manager. He said that a long time ago, but Julio Jones had 7 catches for 149 yards, and if you just look at the stat sheet, it would look like Julio Jones had a career day, had a really good day against Lattimore, and he was targeted 11 times. But Lattimore, early in the game, the Falcons were doing a lot of crossing routes, trying to get Lattimore off of Julio, and they made some big completions there. But when it was just one-on-one, other than those crossing routes, Marshon Lattimore really took it to Julio. Now, Julio did have some catches on Lattimore, but that was a really competitive. Really competitive going one-on-one, and I think that Lattimore has shown that he can be a great number one corner and a great lockdown corner. And on those crossing routes, they were trying to switch off, and they finally just had to let Lattimore say, hey, you got to guard 11 when he's in the game. And Marshon Lattimore really likes going after your number one guy. Even when Julio Jones wasn't on the field, he went after Sanu and guarded him and had a big hit on one of those catches Sanu had. And he had his emergence into this to this defense has been fantastic. He should have been Rookie Defensive Player of the Year just because of how valuable he's been to the Saints defensive team and the defensive backfield. Look, staying kind of with the defense as a whole, and I'm going to break into a little bit of a segue. Cam Jordan should be the Defensive Player of the Year, at least a top 3 candidate with 58 total tackles, 12 sacks, and 11 pass breakups. Those 11 pass breakups are more than, I think he is in the top 100 in the NFL and pass breakups for a defensive end, and he has 12 sacks and 58 total tackles. Cam Jordan does so much more and is so much more valuable to what he brings on the stat sheet. Now, he had 2 big sacks Sunday against the Falcons, but he does so much for this team. He can play inside at the DT, which is kind of sparingly, but he plays great on the end, on the defensive end, and even can stand up and play outside linebacker, which he's so versatile. You don't see a lot of guys doing that. You don't see J.J. Watt, who was a Defensive Player of the Year a couple times. You don't see him really standing up, and Cam Jordan can do that. So his impact on this defense and his motor and just being there and being consistent as long as he has been, it shows how great he is, and had 2 huge sacks when the Saints absolutely needed him against the Falcons last week. I want to segue into this, and it's going to be my last Saints kind of segue, if you will, last point. Drew Brees, over his career, has been pretty much lights out this season. I told you he had a 71.9% completion percentage, but he's thrown for another close to 4,100 yards and 22 scores. Look, he hasn't been sacked but 18 times. LSU fans, I want you to listen to this. Drew Brees has only been sacked 18 times, and that's second in the NFL. Do you know who's your number one guy, or the number one team not giving up the most sacks? The Los Angeles Chargers, who the LSU Tigers. You're going to be getting James Craig, who's going to be coming to Baton Rouge, who is the Chargers offensive line coach. So that unit, Chargers unit, O-line unit, leads the league in giving up the least amount of sacks. So that's what you're getting when you get James or the Craig guy to come to LSU. They really play well. They run the ball with Melvin Gordon really well. Rivers has time to sit in the pocket and throw wherever he wants to. Now, they really are good up front, and the coaching staff gets a lot of credit. Should get a lot of credit for that. But even with San Diego, I know Brees was there for a while, but over his career, Brees has thrown for over 70,000 yards with 70,200, with 487 touchdowns, and with a total QBR of 96.7. Look, Drew Brees a lot of times gets overseen for not being in the playoffs every year, but he only has one championship, and I get that. But Drew, there's something to be said when he's doing this in New Orleans, and no one else has done that, because this is better than when you go to New England. It's better than Brady in a sense, and I'm going to tell you why. Brady has a system and a coaching staff and an organization that's used to winning. And Brees in the New Orleans, before Brees came, the New Orleans Saints weren't used to winning. Him and Sean Payton brought a complete winning style, a complete winning system into New Orleans. And the career numbers that he's putting up are ridiculous. Statistically, Drew Brees is the best quarterback in reference to completion percentage in the NFL. And he's pinpoint. And this is a guy who's doing it at 6 foot, who was told his entire career he was too small, too short, and couldn't do it, and had almost a career-ending injury as well. Drew Brees is a first-round Hall of Famer, and I really do believe that the Saints could, although they won't be your number one seed, may be the toughest team in the NFC. You have Minneapolis, who has a backup quarterback in Case Keenum, who's been playing pretty good. But just look at Nick Foles in Philadelphia. Yesterday against the Raiders, who was not a good defense, really struggled. So the Saints coming into this could make a really, really big-time push. Now, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens these next couple of days, this last week, with Carolina needing to win and just the seeding, how it goes. I don't like that seeding for the Saints if they got to play Carolina for a third time, but we'll get into that, next week after the seeding goes on, because then that way you have a better idea. Okay, guys, I also told you that I was going to be breaking down some LSU recruiting, and I am. Look, I could go down the list of all the guys, and I have the list of all the guys that signed with LSU. And there are some big names. I know Terrace Marshall, the #1 wide receiver in the nation, coming out of 247 Sports, he's composited as the #1 wide receiver in the nation out of Parkway. Before that, a lot of LSU fans were really just not happy with what the ranking showed. But I want to break something down to you as I look at the LSU recruiting. Cole Smith, he's a guy that signed. He's a center out of Mississippi. Just to give you an idea about, look, you got to look deeper into this recruiting class, and you got to look deeper into actually how good these kids really are. Cole Smith, on 247, he's a 3-star. I don't believe he's a top-rated center, but on a couple other websites, he's the top-rated center in the nation. So is he the best center in the nation, or is he not? So I'm here going to kind of break this down for you and to show you what LSU really, really got. And they got some really good pieces. And here's the thing. These are all needs. Every single guy that signed with LSU are all needs that LSU was looking to have. And I know that they signed a lot of defensive linemen. But look, great defenses are able to roll 8 deep on their defensive unit and have an elite front 7. And that's what Ed Orgeron's trying to do with the humble beast and Chase Hines. Look, Trevez Moore is an R&Key kind of guy. He's a JUCO guy that we're getting in. Look, he's 6'6", 250. Okay? I'm not going to sit here and be the guy who's going to say he's better than R&Key, because, look, R&Key's a top 10, top 5 pick in the NFL draft. But what I like about Trevez Moore is, although he can rush the passer, this guy can really stop the run, which has been a boogaboo for R&Key at times early in his career, and even a little bit this season. Trevez Moore could come in and start right away, and these are a lot of guys that can even come in and start right away. I know that we have some offensive guys, Damian Lewis, who's an offensive guard, which when you get these JUCO guys, don't always think it's grades. Damian Lewis has a 4.0 at Northwest. He's a really smart guy and can pick this offense up really, really quick. Badair Toure, however you say it. Look, he's an offensive tackle that could start at the right tackle or left tackle. It doesn't really matter, and it depends on what Toby Weathersby does if he goes into the draft. I think it would be good if Toby comes back. But look, they got a lot of pieces that a lot of guys could come in and really start. And Dare Rosenthal, he got pushed down, okay, to a 3-star as a nose tackle, 6'7", 325. That kid's a monster. Look, this class, you're rebuilding the entire, what you're doing entirely. Like, Les Miles would go after a lot of skill guys, but that's not what Ed Orgeron wants to do. And you're seeing it with the recruiting class. You win, and I've said this for 5 to 6 straight weeks, you win from the football out. You win up front. And when you got really good linemen that you can develop with, which I mentioned earlier, and you can go see earlier in the show, LSU is getting the best offensive line coach, not just in the nation, or in the nation, and he's doing it in the NFL, which is really, really tough to do. Giving up 17 sacks in the NFL is San Diego in that offensive line. And name one person on San Diego's offensive line right now. Can you do that? No, and that's the point. So LSU fans, I really think that you need to focus in on what Ed Orgeron's doing. They get some big-time skill guys, and Jeray Jenkins, who I've been big on. Keenan Jones, 6'3", 200 pounds, could really come in and start right away if he polishes up some of his route running. But look, LSU could still finish with a top 10 class. Kelvin Joseph, who's a safety out of Scotlandville, and I know Patrick Surtain, which everybody's been kind of raving over. He is the favorite, or LSU is the favorite for him. Look, you got a lot of key pieces, but you got to build your team up front, and that's what Ed Orgeron is doing. And like I mentioned just a minute ago, Cole Smith on, I think it's Tiger Droppings or on Rivals. It's the #1 center in the country, and on 247 he's not. So these guys are doing a lot of these rankings and a lot of these things that are going on. What does it really mean? You need to really go look at these guys. When I look at Cole Smith, I don't put him as a 3-star guy. He's got a quick first step. He's not a 3-star guy. I think 247 got that wrong. I'm just looking down the list. Look, Davin Cotton, he didn't play his senior season at Evangel, but he's undersized, a lot of people would say. But he could come in and he's going to be elite at a defensive end in that 3-4. He's a guy that's not being talked about a lot, okay? But you need to keep your eyes on Davin Cotton. If he comes back healthy, he could really make a push into this LSU class. And look, I understand that Terrace Marshall is the biggest recruit, and everybody's raving about him. Look, he's a big-time guy. He's the #1 rated wide receiver that LSU's gotten since Ruben Randall, and Ruben Randall wasn't really a pushover. He showed out, and he was your #1 receiver when you went to last time we went to the national championship against Alabama. So, look, LSU is building a lot of different things, and I think that it's either one or two things. Either you trust Ed Orgeron in his evaluation of these guys, or you trust 247 about guys who really don't always know the greater evaluations of players. Ed Orgeron's been doing this for a long time, and I really think that we need to back Ed Orgeron, and as Philadelphia, as the 76ers would say, trust the process. Because when I look down this and I'm seeing that you can go 8 deep and you got more depth on the offensive line and you got elite skill players, I don't see where the problem is. Now, I know a lot of people will be talking about quarterback, but you still got James Foster that's out there, and I think that LSU will be doing everything